I call the October 24th, 2022 Ludington City Council meeting to order. Welcome and thank you for your attendance. Before we proceed, please check your electronic devices and ensure they're silenced. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilor Terzano?
Present.
Councilor May?
Here.
Councilor Winchester?
Here.
Councilor Johnson?
Here.
Councilor Stivitt?
Here.
Councilor Kane?
Present.
Councilor Belcher?
Here.
I'm present.
Thank you. In lieu of an invocation, please join me in 20 seconds of silence and self-reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll open the floor for public comment. A request of anyone wishing to address council, please step to the lectern and proceed after stating your name and address. Please speak directly into the microphone and address all comments to this chair. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes. If the time limit expires during any comment, I ask that speaker to respectfully finish their sentence and yield the floor. If any speaker wishes to present materials directly to council, I ask that those materials be left on the lectern shelf below the microphone. There'll be another public comment opportunity following communication from city officials. And with that, the floor is open.
I'm Mark Barnett, and I reside at 602 North Lakeshore Drive in the city of Ludington. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity to address council tonight. I'm here tonight to speak about the effort currently underway to change Ludington from an opted-out community to a community that intentionally acts to invite marijuana production, processing, and sales facilities into the local business community. It's been said that the reason that council is pursuing the ordinance change is that this is a citizen-generated issue. The mayor made it perfectly clear early in his term that he was an advocate for changing the council's decision to opt out and make it legal for these businesses to operate in Ludington. I'm asking council to table the passing of the two ordinances that you'll discuss tonight and consider the referendum process as a way forward to truly make this a citizen-decided issue rather than a council-decided issue. Marijuana production, processing, and retail sales are currently illegal in the city under the city ordinance. I would like to encourage this council to work with groups on both sides of this issue in utilizing the referendum process. This process is outlined in section 7.5 of our city charter. The referendum is described in the charter as granting, quote, the registered voters the ability to nullify ordinances enacted by the city, end quote. The referendum process allows city voters to understand what is being proposed and grants them the authority to decide this important issue. The referendum would ask Ludington voters, should the city of Ludington allow for the operation of marijuana production, processing, and sales facilities in the city of Ludington? The two ordinances that have already been drafted should be used in this referendum as a regulation process if the above question is answered in the affirmative. In other words, if Ludington voters say yes to allowing these facilities to operate, then they'll also say yes to the ordinances necessary to regulate them. If Ludington citizens vote to continue the current ordinance by voting no, then we have our answer. And it's an answer that's determined by those that it impacts. The referendum process used at the outset would also protect against potential future liability, as the voters would definitively answer the question at the outset. Again, to be clear, I'm asking this council to consider tabling the approval of the two ordinances and to partner with people on both sides of this issue. This collaboration would be focused on using the referendum process so that the voters can decide this important issue. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Tom Rada, Dowland Street. When four of you voted to spend $58,500 on a deer cull contract with the USDA short on many particulars, you likely thought that the issue was done with. But in many ways, the hunt has just begun. I was at the October 17 board meeting of our school district, where they added the approval of the cull taking place on school property at the last minute, surprising the board and the public since the issue was not looked at in their committee meetings held the prior week. They would unanimously approve the cull taking place in the school forest with the contingency that the city provide as yet unprovided liability insurance for the event scheduled to happen within the school year. Mark Twain famously said, quote, "In the first place, God made idiots. This was for breakfast. Then he made school boards," end quote. This quote is still fresh since these board's own bylaws expressly states in section 7465 that no hunting is permitted in the school forest. Culling deer with firearms is hunting. The district also requires liability insurance for at least $1 million for such activities with the district named as additionally insured for that amount. It should be noted that this isn't in our contract with the USDA, even for the city. If that isn't clear enough, other bylaws expressly prohibit firearms and other dangerous weapons on school property and does not exempt snipers hired by the USDA for killing deer from this prohibition. As Terry Grams noted at the last meeting, we are now contracted to spend city money on a program that effectively culls deer outside of our jurisdiction. And in addition, we are doing so without passing any kind of contract with the Langton Area School District and or PM Township to protect either of our interests and offer any kind of liability coverage for what is a very dangerous undertaking and apparently in violation of school district policy. Article 7, Section 28 of the state's constitution indicates such contracts should be created whenever two jurisdictions, just as a municipality and a school district, assume, quote, the joint administration of any of the functions or powers which each would have the power to perform separately, share the costs and responsibilities of functions and services with one another or with a state or with any combination thereof, which each would have the power to perform separately. Transfer function or responsibilities to one another or any combination thereof upon the consent of each unit involved, end quote.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address council?
I connected with Mr. Reed because Mrs. Ruiz was not.
Excuse me, before you get
Oh,
started.
sorry.
Okay.
Tristan Moore, 208 North Williams.
Thank you.
I connected with Mr. Reed because Mrs. Ruiz was not available, and Mr. Reed encouraged me to speak at the city council meeting. So I am the owner of a short-term rental, and as it relates to the noise ordinances, I rent my property to guests based on their reviews. If they have bad reviews, we do not host them. If I am notified of a noise complaint immediately, I can act immediately. However, if I am not notified in a timely manner, there is little as the homeowner that I can do. For example, I received a letter from the city on September 28th, 2022, notifying me of a noise complaint that had occurred in June 2022. In response to receiving this letter, I have posted additional signage at the property, making guests aware of the noise ordinance in addition to the already posted Good Neighbor guidelines provided by the city. I would like to work with the city in these situations to resolve the issue. And it would be great if responding officers were required to contact the homeowner prior to responding to the home to give the homeowner the opportunity to resolve the issue. It was under my impression that this is one of the reasons that short-term rentals are required to have a local contact available 24/7. Thank you.
Floor is still open for public comment. I see no movement. I'll close the floor for public comment, move on to the approval of tonight's consent agenda, which consists of the approval of council's minutes of the October 10th, 2022 regular meeting, the approval of bill payment for the period commencing October 10th, 2022, and the adoption of this agenda as presented. Do I have a motion to approve this consent agenda as has been presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Terzano, seconded by Councilor May to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any questions or additions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. First up, we have committee and staff reports. We'll hear first from the Finance Personnel Committee. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just have a couple of items here. The City of Ludington has continually utilized CDBG funding for a variety of projects throughout the city. At the culmination of the grant cycle, we are required to undergo a grant monitoring review. During that monitoring review, city plans, processes, and ordinances are also reviewed in relation to the requirements passed down from HUD. This year, it was brought to our attention that a few policies or ordinances needed to be updated or additional ones passed. Those are the policies provided to you for excessive force and non-discrimination. While we have a use of force policy, MEDC requires we pass a policy that includes the federal language for excessive force. In addition, we need an additional policy on non-discrimination that spells out federal language. Although we already have these ordinances in force, the language was changed a little bit to meet, I think it's MEDC guidelines. So the first one, I make a motion to approve the excessive force policy.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilor Johnson, seconded by Councilor Winchesky to approve and adopt the policy of prohibiting the use of excessive force against nonviolent civil rights demonstrators. Any questions or concerns, Council?
Your Honor, if I may,
Sir?
I'm going to vote for this language. However, I understand that it's kind of a bureaucratic requirement. They give us the language and we're pretty much stuck with it. This would prevent using excessive force against civil rights demonstrators. Certainly don't have a problem with that, but it's wrong to use excessive force against any demonstrator, not just if the topic is civil rights. I would say that left to our own devices, we could have drafted a much better policy, which states the plain and obvious fact that by definition, excessive force is wrong in any context. So having stated my dissatisfaction with the language they're making us use, I will still vote for the proposed resolution.
Any other comments, council?
Yes. What does CDBG funding, what's CBDG?
Community development block grants. So those are the large grants that are received by the city through the state of Michigan. Those reside at the Department of Housing and Urban Development at the federal level and are given to the states, who then distribute it out, unless you're an entitlement community who receive those dollars directly, but we do not. So in order to continue to receive them and not to have a finding against us, both of these policies are a requirement from the MEDC.
What is MEDC?
Michigan Economic Development Corporation. They are the economic development agency for the state of Michigan, and as well as one of the larger granting agencies for local grants.
For context, the MEDC was the entity that the city worked with to get funding for Legacy Plaza. So I mean, they help sponsor, promote, and complete large projects like that for our city. Any other questions?
Will our police department need any extra training to fulfill this ordinance if it's passed?
No. Prior to this ordinance being brought to council, I consulted with prior police chief Tim Kozel, as well as the FOPLC, the bargaining unit that represents our police department, and they both understood that we already have an excessive force policy. We already have a use of force policy that would dictate this already. This just kind of fits within that.
All right, we're motion and a second to approve and adopt the policy prohibiting use of excessive force against nonviolent civil rights demonstrators. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
And the next item, I will make a motion to approve the non-discrimination policy on basis of handicap.
Support.
Motion by Counselor Johnson, second by Counselor Bulger to approve the City of Ludington non-discrimination policy on the basis of handicap as is presented, and it's been in your packet. Any questions or concerns, council?
Same question. Does the city have to change any of its procedures to follow this?
No, sir.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This motion is carried.
That's all for me, Your Honor. Sorry.
Moving on, public safety, public utilities. Counselor May.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the first time in quite a while, we don't have any action items tonight. I do have one thing to report on. We're going to postpone this Thursday's public utilities meeting till a week from Thursday, which would be November 1st. And at that time, we're going to decide what we'll do in November and December, with the holidays always falling right on the fourth weeks and whatnot. So that's it, Your Honor.
Did you say the
November
first or the
November
third?
3rd.
Third? Thought it was, my bad, Jack. Okay, November 3rd. And I even looked at the calendar. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Buildings and licenses, public utilities, just completed. Buildings and license, long-range planning, Counselor Terzano.
No report, no action items.
Cemetery, parks and recreation, Counselor Stibbits.
Thank you. We also have no report and no action items, but I do have one thing that I just want to note. It was all in your packet, but something that we did talk about, if you remember, we had approved the permanent book walk sign structures that was going at the Cartier Park walkway. They are no longer going there because the Early Literacy Initiative book walk, or the Great Start collaboration, is very concerned about vandalism. And we kind of talked about that at our meeting. And so they're looking for other places, and they may go to the state park. So just something to note.
Marijuana ad hoc committee. Thank you. Counselor.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Counselor Terzano.
The Marijuana Ad Hoc Committee has completed the ordinances and the application, as well as the scoring rubric. The zoning ordinance is going to go in front of the Planning Commission at its next meeting, which is November 2nd. It's the first Wednesday in November. And then it will come to City Council at its first meeting, I think is it the 15th or the 14th?
14th.
14th, for a first presentation. And the ordinances are in your packet. So you have some time to review them.
It will also be made available on the city's website,
I believe they have been at this point.
already
Yep.
posted. Very
Yep.
good.
If I may, the only thing that we're working on now that Sean Reed is working on is a couple of scenarios on the 500-foot question. Because within the ordinance, there's a 500-foot distance separation requirement between retail facilities. So we're essentially picking a few properties that are listed for sale or underutilized within the James Street and Dowland corridor or Rath Avenue corridor, and kind of going to pick out random ones that someone could potentially buy and show how many theoretically could then be built off of that being the first one. Where can they go from there, so that council and the public can see what that potential could look like. So as soon as we have those together, we'll also include that in both packet as well as on the website, as well as to the newspaper if they'd like that. So
What time is the planning commission meeting start? Next
6.
6.
And I have a question here, Mayor Miller, if we could delve into this a little bit more. Mark Barnett just talked about something in the charter, which he is leading the charter charge right now on that. And Mark, I didn't really understand all that you said, but I did note that you said something about there could be a vote of the city. There was a way you were looking that the charter could allow us to put this before a vote of the city. Could we have him explain that? I didn't.
I would recommend the city attorney explain that process.
Okay.
Sure. So Chief Barnett's correct. In section 7.5 of the charter, the registered, I'll just read it for you. It's pretty straightforward. The registered voters of the city have the power to enact city ordinances called the initiative, and the power to nullify ordinances enacted by the city called the referendum. So in short, you could, as a citizens group, if you meet the petition number and form and content similar to what, as we've discussed under the current recreational marijuana statute, you can also do a petition. But this would be a petition based in the city charter that would then allow, you can basically commence an initiative proceeding so that you could enact a portion of the ordinances that have been presented here. You couldn't enact all of it. The charter is clear. The very first paragraph ends by saying these powers do not extend to a number of things, and then the adoption or amendment of the zoning ordinance of the city of Ludington. So theoretically, a group of citizens from the city could take the police powers section of the ordinance and attempt to gather petition signatures on it and to put it before you all as a council, or I'm sorry, to adopt it as a vote of the people at an upcoming election. So that's, I think, the process that he's referring to is under the charter initiating an ordinance enactment that the people vote on rather than city council votes on to adopt.
Well, I know when we brought this up before we did or at the time we were looking at the marijuana committee meeting, I think that was a lot of our wish was that we could put it before the city for a vote.
I disagree. It might have been your wish.
I disagree too.
We had
It's-
that discussion and we talked about it extensively. And our job is to pass ordinances. The charter does allow citizens, if they want to initiate their own initiative, that they can do it.
Right, well,
But just
this
because an
isn't,
issue is controversial doesn't mean, we don't run a government by referendum. That's
this,
not what we do.
this is an option for a very controversial issue,
It's an
John.
option for the citizens if it passes for the citizens to come together with an initiative to get it removed. It's an opportunity, if it doesn't pass, for individuals who want to have marijuana sales and operations in here, that they can put together a petition. And if you remember, in terms of the discussions that we have, there are people on both sides that have said, regardless of what council is going to do, we're going to put it forth. But that doesn't abrogate our responsibility as a council. Our responsibility as a council is to come forth with the ordinances as they're presented and vote on them.
And our job too is to represent the people in the city of Ludington. So
Yeah,
this would
and our
be,
job is to sit there and listen and make a decision based on how we feel the citizens want to go.
so I guess, Ross, in your opinion, is this something that's even viable, that we could put aside this ordinance for a little bit, get people on both sides of the issue together to put up kind of a referendum and put it before the people? Or can't we do that at this point?
I wouldn't speak to the political viability of it. Technically, in a legal sense, a group of citizens that form a petitioners committee is what it's called. They could physically take the police power ordinance that was developed through the ad hoc committee, and they could create a petition, gather the required signatures, put it before a vote of the people. Now, the timing of that would be weird because obviously depending on what you all do when the draft ordinance comes to you, that could play a role. But in short, it is something that's possible that they could seek to enact it that way. They could also, as I mentioned, there's the initiative and then the referendum. The referendum is a sort of backward-looking thing. So if council enacted this, both ordinances, the citizens would also have the right to initiate a referendum on that ordinance and potentially have it withdrawn. That's just under the charter. The statute is its own petition initiative process and has its own approval process, a referendum rather, process as well. So both under the city charter and under the recreational initiative that was passed in 2018, there is the ability for the citizens to take whichever steps, that they want to take if they meet the requirements under either of those options.
And is that for zoning and police power?
No, so the only way to enact a zoning ordinance is by compliance with the Zoning Enabling Act. We in Traverse City have a little odd thing with our building height issue that is sort of have fallen in this legal black hole. But generally, as a zoning matter, the citizens could not initiate a referendum that would affect the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance amendments or changes are supposed to go through the planning commission, through the process that, provides notice to the surrounding landowners and the like. So that's its own unique process, but a police power ordinance could go through. Yes.
So when this is, let's say that the planning commission passes it on to city council. And if city council, this was my understanding, if city council passed it, then there could be a citizens referendum.
Correct.
To then put it up for a vote of the people.
Correct.
Well, yeah, and I understand, and I went to most of the marijuana committee meetings, and I understand the hard work, especially Jack Bulger did on this and all the work that's gone into it. I really do appreciate it, and I respect what you guys have done. But this was just an idea that I thought, boy, if we could get that to a vote of the people so that then we could use our ordinance, if they say yes, we could use our ordinance that we've just developed. If they say no, then it stays the way it is. Because I think a vote of the people is what a lot of us would like to have happen. But you don't think that's a viable issue?
Not
at
for the
this
zoning
point?
part, but for the police
Police
power,
power.
it is an option.
Can I just ask a quick clarifying question? We're well in advance of it, but if council does decide to pass it, if there is a I can't remember if it's referendum, to remove or to opt out, at that point, the zoning ordinance stays in place, but the police power would be the questioning portion of it, correct? Which really doesn't matter as much because the license itself, which is in the police power side, would be removed.
Right. It's hard to speculate without seeing what the
right
how it ends up in its final form and what petition is submitted. But generally, yes, they would not be able to rescind a zoning ordinance as well as the police power.
But without having a licensing portion on the
Right,
police
it wouldn't-
side, it doesn't
functionally
matter.
you can't
Yep. Okay,
operate.
perfect. Thank you.
Could I ask those that have been around longer than I have, as far as city government, has this ever happened before on other matters? Do we know of where we had a popular vote rather than a city council vote on a local ordinance or topic? Does anybody know?
Not since I.
No. If we, hypothetically, if we were to initiate this, when would be the time to do it? Would it be when it's first, at the first reading? Would that
Do
be the
what?
logical time to make a motion to postpone it until the next proper election time, which I believe is in May of next year?
So if I may, we had this discussion before the initial vote. And at that time, if there were a valid legal process for council to have an initiative, that might well have passed. But the problem is there isn't any way for us to simply say, here, let's let the voters decide this instead of doing our job, which is to pass or not pass ordinances. There's really the charter provision that was referred to is the people's authority and power. It's not ours. So I think the council will have to either vote yes or vote no. And if people follow through the way they said they were, there will be a vote of the people on either side.
Well, my question still stands. What, if we were going to do it hypothetically, when would be the time to do it? To move that we postpone it?
It would be at the first reading.
Reading, okay.
Yes. Because then it would be an agenda item at that
Right, it has
point.
to be properly before you. I mean, right now,
Yep.
it's sort of been presented because, well, my interpretation of our discussions at the ad hoc committee meeting where we just produced basically 45 pages of ordinances. We want to give people plenty of time to
Right,
review,
exactly.
look through, get comfortable, at least with understanding how it works. Separate question of whether you approve it or not, but just being comfortable with the text because there is so much. We wanted to make sure that that was distributed early, but it's not properly before you now. So then the question, Commissioner May's question would be when it's before you.
Thanks.
Any further discussion on this topic, council? Okay, now we'll move on to city manager report.
I believe it's city council first, Your Honor.
Anybody, council, have, thank you. Anyone from council have anything you want to bring up at this point?
Yep, I've got a couple of things. Just to announce, Coffee with the Counselors will be November 3rd at 12 o'clock at Bookmark, and Counselor Bulger and Counselor Winchesky will be there to chat with anybody who comes. Again, that's November 3rd at noon at Bookmark. I also like to just report that I just returned from the Michigan Municipal League Conference in Muskegon. It was a wonderful conference. I appreciate the ability to go, and I'd encourage a lot of us to think about going next year. It's going to be in Traverse City next year, so not too far away again. It was this year was titled "Turn the Page: Local Leaders Shaping the Future," and I just wanted to highlight three things that I think hit Ludington. Number one, everybody is in trouble with housing. Everybody across the state needs more housing, workforce housing, and housing in general. Just to give you an example, there was a realtor there from Muskegon County. Muskegon County in 2018, the average home sale in Muskegon County was $82,000. In 2022, it was $220,000. And so housing has increased tremendously. There's something new called pattern book homes. If some of you, I don't remember this, so I don't know. You used to be able to order a house from Sears catalog. Well, this is kind of the same thing, only they're duplexes and triplexes, but they look like a single house. And everybody has a front door that leads to the outside, And they were very pleasant looking houses, but they're called pattern book homes. And a lot of cities are putting those in vacant lots that they have to increase the density of that. So that sounded interesting. There's lots and lots of grant funding coming through for climate sustainability and energy issues in the next 3 years. And a lot of it will be electrification of cars, trucks, even heavy duty trucks. They're looking at electrifying a lot with home insulation, new efficient furnaces, those kind of things. We just put in a furnace, and I found out that if you did it next year, you might get a rebate. So if you're thinking about it, wait a little bit. But lots and lots of money through the infrastructure bill. But it'll be 2 or 3 years yet before we see a lot of that. Also, this was really interesting. There was a speaker there that talked about music and communities. His name was John Sinkovitz, and he runs Local Spins. It's an online magazine in New York. He cited Ludington as a musical venue. He cited the West Shore concerts, which are free. They're outdoors. And he said what's really important about the West Shore concerts is they vary the genre. It's country, it's light rock, it's jazz. He also cited Downtown live music on Thursday and Friday night, or one of the nights. And then he also cited Ludrock, who allows young performers a stage to work on. So I thought that was really good too. So I'd encourage all of you to think about going next year. It was a great time to learn and to network with other people.
Sorry, I skipped you there.
That's all right.
Okay, good report. Anyone else have anything to report? City manager?
That's my turn. All right. Thank you, Your Honor. Just a few items. One, again, unless I'm typically asked these questions, public comment, I leave as public comment. However, there was questions on the deer call. Just to touch on that, we've already received confirmation that the school district is satisfied by the federal government's tort information regarding liability insurance or insurance coverage, so they don't have a problem there. In addition, we continue to work with them. The school district, again, these are licensed law enforcement professionals, and again, are duly authorized, so they do not fall under the same rules. And I think, as we've talked about before, unfortunately or unfortunately, the federal government sets most of the rules. And they do not fall under most of the categories that are of concern a lot of the time, including the expenditures outside of the city limits. These ARPA dollars are actually eligible to be transferred outside to other agencies. So this is an eligible expenditure under ARPA, given the general revenue loss exception that was included there. So I did want to clarify that before I got too far into other items. A few more things. The city has thrown in an intent to apply for part of the, it's either, I can't remember if it's ARPA dollars or the Infrastructure Act dollars. There's just a lot of stimulus out there still at the governmental level for $15 million to see what their response is. So the process with a lot of these state grants, especially the safe drinking water or the clean water, clean water levels, is you submit an intent to apply, and you have a sit-down meeting with Eagle, and they tell you whether or not you will qualify for grants or loans. It's non-requirement, it's non-committal. It's really just, hey, here's our project, here's our status of debt and our residential users. Will we qualify to receive the grants or forgivable loans? And so we will have that within the next 12 days, which will dictate it, because I don't think anybody up here is interested in additional debt at this point in time after the 2 large projects. But if we're able to get some grant dollars to help pay for lead line replacement or the unknown number of the sludge pond closure, we want to at least investigate that here early on. Let's see here. The chief search, we are down to a single candidate, unfortunately. We had one of our finalists drop out. So we have Ryan Myers still attending on the 10th and 11th, but I did want to give council that update. And the last one is both a positive and something we need to work on. In my report for you this evening, I discussed the $2.4 billion battery plant that was announced for Big Rapids. It's an hour and 10 minutes away. I completely understand that, but they are talking about average wages of $29 an hour. I can foresee a number of our folks in this area or the eastern part of the county that drive into Ludington might be willing to drive to Big Rapids to get paid $20 an hour, $25 an hour. And so this is something that we have to recognize and work with our businesses on. This is something that I'm sure MCC, MCE, LASD, West Shore, all of our educational institutions are looking at, because they're talking about 2,500 jobs. It is doubling the size, the taxable value of the city of Big Rapids. It is huge. So just something that we have to keep on kind of the forefront, as here is a big project that we have to continue to work with our businesses to be prepared for, because I doubt we're going to see 2,500 people move to Big Rapids all of a sudden. It's going to be people being siphoned from other businesses. So how can we help our businesses here in town? Christy Zimmerman from the Chamber with Economic Development, she'll be here in November to give a report to you all. But this is something that she's already started thinking about. So other than that, that's
And
all I
then
have for you this
The
evening.
time frame for the new plant?
I believe they're looking at trying to have batteries off the floor by 2025. So unless there are other questions, that's all I have for you this evening. Yes, sir.
Mitch, could I ask regarding the new chief or the chief selection process? Should we be unhappy with this candidate? Are we prepared to just have a Chief Ski continue on?
We would have to have that doesn't put him in an awkward position at all. We would have to have an internal conversation, obviously, but then we would also, depending upon what that internal conversation would be, we would then determine whether or not we reopen the position for another period of time.
So we're not going to get the third and fourth candidate?
We actually reached out to both of them. One never responded for whatever reason, and the third candidate actually originally was going to say yes, but personal issues could not say yes in the end to come up here for the finalist. This is going to be an issue, I think, for all communities moving forward, is finding people that want to do these jobs. Correct, Captain? It's a tough position in right now, and it's a tough position to recruit for, frankly. I talked to a friend of mine who's the city manager down in the Milford area, and they went through this process and had to change the way they looked at compensation and housing, frankly, because of trying to attract people anywhere. So definitely something we have to consider moving forward.
Can I ask you a question or get back to the deer call?
Yes, yes.
I don't want to beat it to death, but one thing that I forgot to bring up.
We do.
Yep.
We're
We're
going to
gonna
shoot
be-
them. Let's
we're-
not beat them.
We're probably going to target the school forest.
Correct.
Will we be working with PM Township on that? And then also, what about our friends out at Crosswinds? I mean, they have a ton of deer in that little area right there, and we certainly can't go in there and shoot deer.
No, in the unfortunate situation, so we're able to work. We don't have to work with Pure Marquette Charter Township because it's school-owned property. If it was township-owned property, we would have to work with them. Cartier Park is the other identified location just because of how large of a facility it is. Crosswinds is difficult because there's no open space around there. My understanding is there have been discussions within PM Township about doing either a private longer hunt, but no discussion about a deer call. And so as of right now, there haven't been those discussions, but I think the closer we get to it, the DNR might ask us to have part of those because I know the DNR have been engaged. Also, just to clarify, the USDA and the DNR both consider deer calls as removal programs. These are not hunting programs. They are very, very explicit that they are not hunting deer. They aren't sportsmen. They're out there to do a job and to remove the deer. That's it. They're not hunting them. They're not. Those are two very different things. So it's more of a maintenance program than a sport hunting. So just wanted to clarify that.
Anyone else? I have a couple of things. I was in attendance today along with City Manager Foster, Councilors Terzano, Winchesky, and Johnson, Councilor Bolger, at the Lofts at Row grand opening. It was one of the long-awaited housing projects in the city by a private developer that so many entities had to collaborate to get to come to fruition, and the first tenants move in tomorrow. 67 units. Wow. They have plenty of activity on that property, and I think we were all duly impressed with the project itself. and the quality, and look forward to the momentum that this brings to see other projects come forward, whether it's private building on Lakeview School, old Lakeview School property, or 95 units on the south side of town by the river. More good things are coming, and it is a pleasure to see something that revitalized the neighborhood, reused and repurposed an old building. Nothing but good has come out of this, and I look forward to a lot more development to help with the housing needs we have here in the city. And like Councilor Winchesky, I attended for a little bit of the MML conference. I was asked to speak along with the mayor of Holland regarding the community exchange program, where Holland's city council came here for a day, and councilors from Ludington went to Holland. And we spent all of 30 seconds collaborating on what we were going to talk about. He had his things he wanted to talk about, and I had mine. And coincidentally, they worked very well together. Nothing but positives came from it, from what I received from feedback from council and what Councilor Box received in Holland. And the reason we were asked to speak is because we had expressed this positive feedback to the MML, and they see this program as going away. Just the interest wasn't there, and they asked us to come speak towards it. And we had our strongest recommendations that we would like to continue in some fashion, and we would encourage everybody else to do the same. And for our 15 minutes of fame, they appreciated what we brought forward. I don't know if we changed anybody's mind. We didn't have a whole lot of time for discussion afterwards, but I appreciate the input from council and the opportunity to speak in front of the MML board regarding something which I think we all agreed was very worthwhile. I do have an action item here. The annual mayoral appointments to city boards, authorities, councils, and commissions are reviewed and updated and reappointed periodically to member retirement, relocations, etc. Tonight, to fill a vacated spot for the remainder of the initially appointed term, I present to you the name of Stacy Cox as my nomination for appointment to the Downtown Development Authority. I believe this appointment will be the last one to the DDA, and the DDA with this appointment will be fully staffed again with volunteers. Ms. Cox and her husband have been major players in bringing a new vitality to an empty storefront on Ludington Avenue, successfully incorporating the port, their vision of bringing multiple small businesses together under one roof, providing more retail business and services to the DDA and the community. And I respectfully ask for council's unanimous consent for the approval of Ms. Cox to this position. Does council have any questions or concerns?
Yes, Your Honor. Well, the term she's filling, how long, when would that term end?
That will be looked at. It will be the longest one. I think there's one for 2025 that is vacant. But I'll leave that up to the president of DDA, Kathy McLean, to make sure that that this one is slotted. We believe that this is the 13th seat to be filled, and it was our discussion today. It was the 25th, but until I have that right in front of me, or the 2025, but until I have that in front of me, I can't say specifically. Any other questions? And
I will move to approve.
I'll second.
motion by Counselor Johnson, second by Counselor Winchesky to appoint Ms. Stacy Cox for the remainder of a term for the DDA. Any further questions or concerns? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. I appreciate Mrs. Cox volunteering for this position and look forward to her involvement. We'll move on to public comment, and I request anyone wishing to address council, please step to the lectern and proceed after stating your name and address. Please speak directly into the microphone and address all comments to this chair. Each speaker will be allotted 2 minutes. Time expires during any comment. I respectfully ask the speaker to finish their sentence and yield the floor. Anyone wishing to address or present materials directly to council, I ask that they leave those on the lectern, the shelf below the microphone. And with that, the floor is open.
Mark Barnett, 602 North Lakeshore Drive. I appreciate the discussion earlier. regarding the request to consider a referendum. I did want to make clear one of the points that I made earlier, and I'll quote that: "The referendum process used at the outset would also protect against potential future liability, as the voters would definitively answer the question at the outset." My purpose in saying that was the referendum process, there's quite a time frame between the time that the ordinance, if you choose to go that way, were approved, and the time that the vote would take place and having a factor and impact on that on that ordinance or the existing ordinances in place now. And I would hope that as you make your decisions relative to these two new ordinances and if you choose to move ahead with them now, that wouldn't open up the city to liability if in fact a referendum were held to not go forward and not allow these businesses to take place because of money spent in developing things that had been approved by ordinance, but then would then become null and void if the referendum were successful to not have them be allowed in the city of Ludington. So I just make that brief comment by way of explanation. Thank you.
Hi, Cheryl Fielding, 307 North Harrison. So the first time I talked here, I had never even attended a city council meeting, and so I've sat through a lot of these in the marijuana ad hoc committee every week, every time it's there. And I've learned a lot. And I want to say I'm very encouraged by all the conversation between chickens and deer and the council being open to every discussion. And Mr. Balger, you said, will, maybe the citizens do the referendum, and we're ready to go. So I want you guys to know that when you're discussing the option that he's presented today, that we will move forward with it. And our whole goal is that the whole city votes, not just 7 people, because I know you don't know how all of the people in Ludington feel, because I talk to a lot of them, hotel owners, business owners, whatever, but they don't want to come here and they don't want to talk. They want someone to bring it up. And so I'm willing to do it, and I'm going to do it. But I'm encouraged that maybe we can just work together and maybe come up with an option before we have to get to that point, and let us all decide. Let everybody decide. Mayor Miller, I've listened to you quite a few times encouraging people to be relentless in what they believe in, and here I am. So, thank you.
I compliment you for that. Anyone else wishing to address council? I see none, and I'll close the floor to public comment and move on to miscellaneous business. Council have anything further to add before I ask for a motion to adjourn?
I have one thing, Your Honor. A week from today is Halloween. I believe that there's trick-or-treating downtown, in downtown businesses this Saturday. But I just want to wish everyone a happy and very safe Halloween. And candy's available at 608 West Court Street.
I just like to end with one good thing too, if I can. The fall colors are at their peak in Mason County. Be sure to get out and enjoy nature's masterpiece of multiple colored tree landscapes. It sounds like we have one more day before it turns.
Thank you. If no one else on council has anything forward to bring forward, I'll seek a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Terzano, second by Councilor May to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you for your attendance and your participation. This meeting is adjourned.
All right.
adjourned.